Hello everyone, Father Ben here from the Against the Grain podcast. The episode you're about to watch involves some very heavy content, some serious content, and so I ask families to discern whether or not they want to watch this with their young ones. But to those of you who do watch the episode, I want you to know that in the church there is healing, that our Lord died for all our sins, even the most atrocious of sins he died for. And if you're a person who has experienced in any way the grief, the loss, the trauma of abortion, I ask you to make contact with your priest, to have a conversation, to start the process of healing, to talk to someone in your pastoral care team at your parish about the way forward. The way forward is healing. Our Lord doesn't want you to be held down by this sin. He wants you to be healed from it. And he wants you to know that in him anything is possible, that in him you will be given the strength to do what you think is difficult. Say yes to life. And if you haven't in the past, then please know the church is here for you in your healing. We pray that this episode is taken in the spirit with which we filmed it, one that is educational and informative, and one that will help people realize the great atrocity of our time, and that is the killing off of a vulnerable generation, the killing off of infants in the womb. And we pray for an end to this most grievous act. We pray for an end to the culture of death. And we pray that everyone has a conversion of heart and says yes to life. God bless.
Well, to all of those at home, to our beautiful internet people, welcome to another episode of Against the Grain, where father and son talk faith and footy. I'm one of your co-hosts, Father Ben, joined by the spiritual son, Anthony, and today by a very special guest, Paul Hanrahan, Executive Director of Family Life International. Paul, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you, Father. Thank you, Anthony.
Good to have you with us. Now, Paul, for those of you who have never met him, has one of the most remarkable stories. He is the reason, by the help of God's grace,
Definitely,
that we have over 600 little ones walking around in the world today. And you might be thinking to yourself, is he an OBGYN? Is he a pre or a postnatal specialist? Is he a doctor of some sorts? Paul has done some very special work for nearly 3 decades now in helping young men and women who are pregnant, who find themselves in situations where there was a pregnancy that they weren't planning. He has helped them say yes to life. And so now I know the tone of the show changes completely, because you're thinking, oh, how nice. He's a doctor, he's this, he's that, he's the other. But no, he's one of the guys that bravely and courageously has stood on the sidewalks of abortion clinics for nearly 3 decades before it became illegal. And he is a person who truly says yes to choice, because he gives women in crisis pregnancies all the choices in the world, and it doesn't have to be death. And so I wanted to introduce you that way, Paul, because there are so many little kids walking around today, thanks to your presence on the sidewalks, and thousands of women who have stopped to have a conversation with you on those sidewalks where they thought the only option was abortion.
Yep.
Now, before we get into all of that, it's sensitive content today. So we ask you and your families at home to discern this episode. And we also know that it will be sensitive to a lot of our female viewers too. But we're going to show you that in the church, the compassion, the love, the respect for the dignity of the female, the dignity of the human being, the little baby in the womb, that in the church, there is the right response. It's the yes to life. So we're going to get into all of that in this episode. And again, we just put that disclaimer out there to all of our viewers and our listeners that it's some heavy content, but we pray that you will be edified by the content by the end of the show. Okay? So, over to the spiritual son.
Well, as always, we would like to thank our sponsors before we get into the guts of the show. And that's our sponsor at MJ Podiatry. And just to remind everyone at home, MJ Podiatry is a mobile home visit network servicing all throughout Sydney. They're an all-round podiatry service, giving out general treatments, anything for sport as well, and NDIS and home care packaging are available as always. For any pains, injuries, custom-made orthotics, advice on footwear, anything you need, as we always say, Paul, MJ Podiatry has your back, but they've also got your feet. So visit their website at www.mjpodiatry.com.au or contact the team at 0412389278 or email them at info@mjpodiatry.com.au, and don't forget the ATG10 promo code for 10% off.
Amazing.
Thank you, MJ Podiatry.
Thank you to MJ Podiatry. And just a couple of brief event announcements coming up very quickly around the corner now. The Dad's Rock Conference, which is put on by the family educators of the Erythropolis Network of Sydney on the 19th of August, 6:45 to 8:30 p.m. at Club Marconi. You've got a few gun speakers there. Charbel Reish from Perusia Media, Tomislav Uskok from MacArthur FC, who's both of those guys have been on our show, and the parish priest at St. Anthony of Padua, Austral, Father Ronnie Marie. They're all going to be there talking and giving witness to masculinity and it properly lived out in the world we live in. So we encourage all fathers, all sons, even expectant fathers, because you are a father when you find out that that your wife is pregnant. You are a father. So we want everyone to get out to that and lend your support. That's 19th of August at Club Marconi, and you'll see those details on the screen. The next event, run by the men's ministry of the Sydney Archdiocese, is going to be on the 21st of September, the Be Not Afraid Conference. So continue to watch this space. We'll have the graphic up on the screen as I give this announcement. 21st of September, an all-day men's conference at St. Mary's Cathedral. So those are our events coming up. That's our sponsor. So let's get into what is a very, very serious thing in the world today. And Paul, you've given best part of half your life to, even more. And that is this, ultimately what it comes down to fundamentally is the dignity of the human person at all stages from conception to natural death.
Yep.
So before we get into why you do what you do, just give the audience at home and our listeners a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself.
Brief bio.
Okay, well, I'm one of 7 children. Well, really 8. There was an older brother who was stillborn and anencephaly. And my father had been in a previous marriage and his wife had died. They had a baby and she was 2 days old when his wife died. So he sure knew grief and sorrow at those things. And he met my mum a few years down the track then. And she was a country girl, Grenfell, New South Wales. And Henry Lawson was born and raised in Grenfell, their claim to fame. And strong Irish background, my family. I've got 50 first cousins. My great grandfather left Ireland when he was 16. His mother said, "I'll never see you again." Because back in 1880 odd, you didn't fly around the world in no time. It's a big trip, and he never did get back and see her. So that's kind of very sad part of it. So I relate very much to my Irish heritage, and it's one of the modern tragedies what's happened in Ireland, because for centuries they were persecuted in lots of ways, and many Irish people are martyrs one way or another, and they wouldn't relinquish their faith. But the modern materialistic world has destroyed the faith pretty much in Ireland. So that's a tragedy. But so I didn't know any of that. I went to a Catholic school. I finished school in 1973, the HSC, and I, like most of my classmates, didn't really know my faith, hadn't learned it, and went off and engaged with the world and did all the wrong things. And I was married in 85 and we didn't have our first child till 89. My mum died 5 months after he was born. Her prayers brought me back. A family friend actually told me several years after Mum died that when I was then going to Mass daily, she said your mother had said to her when she's in hospital dying, if my suffering does nothing but bring Paul back to the church, it will be worth it. So that's kind of remarkable. I gave Mum's eulogy, didn't cry, but I nearly cried that. It was a teary moment to know that, because I had other siblings that weren't practicing their faith, but I was a bit more obvious about things. So I've always been like that, I suppose. But it's that's kind of like a little bit of how I got back to my faith, and realising I didn't know my faith very well. I wanted to learn it, so I started listening to Scott Hahn and people like that, the Catholic apologists, anti-Catholic Protestants who became Catholic. So it was fascinating to me, because I have a lot of friends who weren't Catholic, were either atheists or Protestants and not practicing usually, and they'd always be into the church. And even when I wasn't practicing my faith, I'd defend the church. It was quite odd when I think about it, but now I wanted to learn it. And my idea, I got very interested in Catholic apologetics, and I met David Abid and Robert Haddad very early on when they just started Lumen Verum. But God had other ideas for me, so I went to an apologetics talk. Jerry Matitix was a good friend of Scott Hahn's. He was meant to save Scott Hahn from becoming a Catholic, and he became a Catholic. He was speaking he spoke down near us at Miranda, where I live in the Shire, and then he was speaking at Riverwood, and happened to be, without my knowing this, it was the parish priest there was Father John Walter, now retired, very good priest, and Gail Instance, who'd started this organisation. It wasn't called Family Life International then, it was called Human Life International when I first came across them. And it was her parish, and they were there recruiting people for a pro-life event, which I put my name down at the encouragement of the speaker, Matitix. Everyone did. So I put my name down, and when I got a letter in them, there was no mobile phones and laptops and things then. It was mail, right? I got a letter 3 months later reminding me about this, and I went, I don't want to do that. But I put my name down, so I went. Well, the rest is history, if you like. So that's, if you like, how God led me to the pro-life movement, because he figures if I like an argument, there'll be better arguments and discussions here. And of course, I think I've learnt more standing on the street. I've had some fantastic priests and teachers, lay and priest, religious teachers, but a great Jesuit initially, and Monsignor Philip Riley in America is like a spiritual father, and people like that. But I think I learnt more, and I listen to everything. I've been blessed with a good memory. I learnt more from standing on the sidewalk, as the Americans would call it, standing on the street outside abortion mills, probably than any other way, because it put it all in perspective. I used to say to people, well, now I know why our Lord spent the 3 years of his public ministry on the street. You know, the birds of the air have their nests, the foxes have their holes, the Son of Man's got nowhere to lay his head. It's enlightening in lots of ways, and not just for the people going into the abortion mills, people going past defending it, and the people that live in the area, and often in inner Sydney suburbs, a lot of poor people, a lot of homeless people even, and it's certainly an experience.
Yeah, wow. This is rather profound for me and Anthony to have you on the show, because the pro-life movement was a large part of my reversion into the faith, and that's where you and I met.
Yeah.
But then I started to take this cause into my home parish of St. Felix, Bankstown, and it was me getting up to promote a 40 Hours for Life where I met this young man. Yeah, 40 Days for Life, where I met this young man and his family. And that sparked not only a faith community, a youth group, but it also sparked a lifelong friendship, and we've been in one another's lives intimately with family and with all sorts of things. And you're the common denominator in all of that, because without that, I mean, you know, the Lord says you've got to pick up your cross and you've got to follow me. And I lost a lot of friends. I lost a lot of people, misunderstood me, and that's just what happens when you want to follow Jesus. That happens. But then he promises you 100-fold if you follow him. And so I met all these guys through what we were doing with you.
Yep. It's great to hear.
Mate. So it's really a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And again, I just sometimes it's easy and convenient to overlook this issue.
Yep.
Because no one likes to talk about it. Everyone will disguise it as none of your business. You shouldn't talk about this. You shouldn't. But when it comes to the defense of human life, it's everyone's business.
Indeed.
And so we now have a law in New South Wales where you can't do what you did for many decades.
That's right.
That's the bubble. Do you want to explain that to us, and then we'll go into a little bit about what you would do on the sideworks when it was legal?
Okay. They're called safe access zones, and they were implemented firstly in Tasmania. And what was the year? Over 10 years ago. I can't remember. It's 2013 maybe when that came in there. Nobody was doing what we're doing pretty much. There were some people that would pray silently across the road from the abortion mill in Hobart, but really no one was actively engaged with the people and doing those sorts of things. It's a unicameral parliament, a single house. It's a small one. It was a test. It was always going, I said at the time, this is a trial run to introduce it into the mainland, right? And we need to stop it there. And things happened. Archbishop Julian Porteous had been just appointed down there, and he's the patron of our organisation, Family Life International. So it was opportune, but I don't want to mention other people who I think got in the way and did the wrong things and scotched the plans we might have had, but that's what happened. And the next place then was Victoria. And of course now it's happened around the country. Every state in Australia has what's euphemistically called bubble zones, areas around abortion mills that say you can go to jail for 12 months and face up to $11,000 in fines if you approach or talk to or even indicate to someone your opposition to abortion. You can be standing there praying with your rosary beads, would be enough to put you in before the courts. So it's pretty severe, and the zone is insane. It's 150 metres. That's 500. You got to explain it in feet and inches to Americans because they don't get metres. And we'd say 500 feet. It's like, what? That's crazy. So you can't be anywhere near it. There's an exception in New South Wales because the legislation in New South Wales allows you to pray outside Parliament House. And outside Parliament House means you're 20 metres away across the road from two abortion mills in Macquarie Street, opposite Parliament House. So we can still do that, and that's helpful. But the laws were, very interestingly enough, a lot of people don't realise this, implemented in every state. We organised someone as a volunteer to get arrested in Victoria and take it to the High Court. You can appeal straight to the High Court with things, especially on constitutional grounds and stuff like that, but you can be up for a lot of money. And what people don't know, that Bob Brown, the leader and one of the founders of the Greens movement in Australia, took a case to the High Court directly against bubble zones around logging sites. In northern New South Wales, someone was killed, a worker was killed because people got in the zone and he had to try and get him out, and it's a long story, he got killed by a falling tree. And it's dangerous for a lot of reasons. But the High Court upheld that appeal of Bob Brown's and struck those bubble zones down around logging sites. And that seemed to be a good grounds to appeal this one on, the bubble zones, safe access zones around abortion mills, which, by the way, for most of Australia, certainly in New South Wales, were operating illegally. Whilst there was a blind eye being turned to the laws, and whilst there were precedent cases set by lower court judges, district court judge in New South Wales, the case, Levine, back in the early 70s, they technically were breaking the law. So to put something that was a safe access zone around something that's effectively illegal was insanity, but they did it. There was no more than 40 people doing what we do around this country. 40 is probably an overestimate. That's on a regular basis. I don't mean people that come every now and again and things like that, but the regular week in, week out presence at an abortion mill, there's 30, 40 at the most. I know them all. That's why I know this is the truth. They were all that. The governments of Australia, including New South Wales government, spent millions of dollars to stop 40 people, because when that case, we got Kathy Clubb was arrested, we went to the police in Victoria and told them what we were going to do. So they organised someone we didn't want media, we didn't want a lot of nonsense, we just want to get this to the courts. And that was the best way of doing it. So she volunteered, a single mum with 13 kids, by the way, and a great pro-lifer, and now also a director at Family Life International. So she did, and it went to the High Court, and we lost. A whole lot of reasons there as well, and that's irrelevant in this debate. But every Attorney General got admitted as a friend of the court for this case. So each state spent a substantial amount of money. It went to the High Court to stop 30, 40 people. Wow. That's how much we were, that's how effective we were. They knew that. The abortion mills knew that. They'd been working up for something like this for a long time. And there's a lot, you could talk about that history, what was going on in places like Albury and other places. That's a huge topic on its own.
Let's paint a picture for a second, because I spent many hours, as did Anthony, outside, not as counsellors, but praying, especially during the 40 Days for Life, which was during Lent, in the lead up to Easter each year. So to paint the picture, we would be across the road and we weren't engaging with people. We were there in silent prayer. There were moments of silence, and there were moments where we'd pray the rosary and sing a hymn. And so it was across the road, okay? Then to watch you do what you do, I need to be very clear here, because a lot of the time people make up stories that these sidewalk counsellors are violent, they harass, they impede the person from doing what they want to do. And I can say, for all the many hours I spent praying outside those clinics, I never once saw anything aggressive.
No.
It was always a conversational style. You can tell this story better than I can, because it got to the point where people would put in false complaints against you to police.
Yep.
So do you want to talk a little bit about what your approach was when you would see a young woman, a woman of any age that was pregnant, walking in toward the clinic? What was that like?
The first thing is, there's a lot of traffic outside those places, just people going up and down around about their business, and you get to know who's going in. You pick up things. It's like, I've used the comparison. We've seen some great tennis more recently, Wimbledon and the Olympic Games tennis events. There are guys that can hit a tennis ball at like 220 kilometres an hour when they serve. The tennis court's not that long, not that big, and you don't have much reaction time. In fact, the reaction time normally it would take someone, and the time that ball gets there is quicker. In other words, if you wait to see where it's going and react, you're not going to get it. They have to anticipate. They have to know where they're going. There's got to be that anticipation. Same as with Formula One racing car drivers. Driving cars at 300 and something kilometres an hour, you kind of have an instinct for this. It's the same idea, if you like. But we have to, you develop an instinct, and so you have an idea. But you could get things wrong still. So you kind of got to have a approach that suits whatever their situation is, whether they're going in there for that, because unfortunately also women with ectopic pregnancies, for instance, would be often sent to these places, or not so much ectopic pregnancy, sorry, that would be in the hospital, but women that had actually lost a baby, had died, and they needed to go and have the procedure to make sure there was no remains of left, the placenta or anything else, and they would go to abortion clinics. So, and they'd be devastated. These women that wanted a baby. So we met several women like that, and they were pretty upset that we're linking them to this abortion and all the rest of it. It was disgraceful they were going there for this procedure, but they were. And so you learn to say the right things that are quite a neutral. And I would just introduce myself and say, we're here often help the people find themselves in difficult situations, right? And and you might know someone that one day, and I'd offer the pamphlet that we have. It'd soon become obvious if they were going in. Well, I had a good idea anyway, but that's basically how we'd start the conversation. And just on the false accusations, we'd video what we do for that reason. And the police got to know that. They'd come down, they say, they, being usually the staff, said, you did this. And I go, well, these people kill babies for a living and they've got no qualms about telling lies, right? So there were a lot of police who were pretty good. And I'd never asked them what their position was. They were doing a job. But we had one occasion where an inspector said to me, yeah, but the video camera doesn't always show, the whole story. It's just from one angle. And I said, yeah, I know. That's why we've got two. He went, oh, right, I get it. You've got to do things to protect yourself because of those accusations. But it was a lot of those accusations that were the cause, or were the substance, if you like, for politicians to introduce these particular safe access zone laws and push them through. I gave the New South Wales Attorney General at the time, Mark Speakman, now opposition leader, 5 video interviews with women we'd helped outside abortion mills, including a couple that we helped after the abortion. Now, if we were abusing people going in, no one coming out would be stopping talking to us. Yep. But they did. And this couple came to us when they were pregnant again to get help.
Yes.
Which we helped.
That is, we got to pause there, okay? That is very significant, because a person, as you said, that would be abusive on the way in would not be approached on the way out.
Yep.
If there wasn't a kind-heartedness, a genuine desire for you to help that person, they wouldn't stop and be asking for help.
No.
This completely flips the script on what anyone hears when it comes to this.
Yep.
Ironically, in this equality bill that's going out at the moment, whilst there's bubble zones outside abortion clinics, one of the things in this equality bill will be that prostitutes will get to solicit themselves outside of schools.
Yes.
It shows you the degradation of society and culture as we know it.
Absolutely.
And the way that the government has just lost all its bearings when it comes to morality. All these things are trying to be pushed. It's terrible stuff. But I wanted to just highlight that because you offer choice where women and men who have no idea what they're doing think they have no choice.
Oh, by the way, I've spoken to 7,000 women at least, actually spoken to them. Every single one without fail said, I have no choice. If it's about choice, something's wrong, because they don't feel there's a choice. There's levels of coercion on these people, some pretty dramatic. Threats have been kicked out of homes, physical threats by boyfriends and people like that, husbands, to more mild threats and encouragement to abort, making them feel there's no support for them. In fact, I said to one young couple, they stopped and talked to me, and the guy's doing all the talking. He's telling me he doesn't agree with abortion. He thinks it's no good and blah, 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 right? The young girl's just standing there, and I went, can I ask you a question, miss? She said, sure. I said, if he told you he loved you and he's going to look after you and the baby, would you be here? She said, hell no. And so I looked at him and I said, it's up to you. You got to man up. Well, he went in and took her in there, and I think they had the abortion.
And this is the guy that's against it.
Correct, apparently.
Apparently.
So it's irresponsibility. So another young couple are Islanders, and he was only young. I was about 18. The girl was younger. And he was big. If he hit me, I was going to stay hit. Yeah. And I said to him, "You're only young. You need to grow up. You need to be a man. You now got responsibilities. You need to take her home. You need to look after her and the baby." And he said to me, he looked at me, said, "You're right," and off they went. It was as simple as that.
Wow.
Just needed that encouragement. Most people that are going there don't actually need a lot of help. They need to know there's help if they do. Yeah. It's that uncertainty for them, because like you say, you were talking about unplanned pregnancies, and we don't like to even talk about that. Unplanned is not the right word. I mean, it leads to the mentality that people have that abortion's an option, and because of the widespread use of contraception these days, that people think they're managing their fertility and they're in charge of all this, and the idea that we're cooperating with God is out the window. So we don't talk about every baby should be wanted as the pro-aborts do. We talk about every baby should be welcomed. There's a big difference.
Yes.
So a lot of pregnancies, for a lot of people, a lot of kids run around who weren't planned so much. They were planned by God.
Yeah.
But that's how it works.
Yeah.
So we do ourselves a disservice. We don't want to use their language. That's a big thing.
You're right. So, You're right. As you're saying that and correcting me on that, and I'm glad you did, I'm thinking of Dr. Janet Smith's world famous talk on contraception.
Yep.
When she's talking about pregnancy, if you're going to put a car in drive, it's going to go forward. It's like, what were you expecting?
Yep, that's
if
right.
a man and a woman come together in that way, that's generally what happens.
That's it. That's what's natural.
Yeah, that's right. So, no, I'm glad you did that, because this is a thing. I want to speak to that point on you just speaking to these men, and it's very unpopular in that particular, I suppose, movement, that a man should have a voice in all of this.
Yes, sure.
But okay, the man had the voice in either manipulating or flirting or dropping the guard of the young woman that he's with into sleeping together.
Yep.
He had a role in that.
Yes.
He had a say in that. And now, because a pregnancy has resulted, he doesn't get a say, or he's told that his voice is needs to be snuffed out or is irrelevant.
Yep.
What can you speak to in that?
Lots. Look, I tell people, one of the things is, a lot of people encourage me to write books, and that's another story, but I can talk about this for your batteries will run out if I keep talking about these. So I've got a lot of stories, and they're amazing, really, you think about it. But a lot of men who don't want her to have an abortion and will do the right thing, but she's, for whatever reason, not trusting them, or she doesn't want the baby. It works the other way around at times, but I've had young men in tears, and they're not strong enough to get her out and say, come on. They lack the courage to make a full commitment. I think that's part of it, right? So, and she senses that. But or maybe parents and family don't like the guy, or whatever it is. There's all these things that are in the background. But I had one young man come down the street on his own and kick our posters. As you know, we have posters that were holy pictures, babies that are born and little babies, and also aborted babies, the contrast. Amazingly, the poster most likely to be kicked were the religious ones. Our Lady Guadalupe and our Lord himself. We had a poster with our Lord holding an unborn baby in his palm of his hand and things like that. But it was clear that happened a lot, by the way, poster kicking. And I was usually in the gun that had to sort of interfere to stop them kicking anymore. But I went across to stop him, and he shoved me in the chest quite hard. And something instinct or something told me. And I looked at him. I said, "Let me help you." And he teared up. And he started saying, but he walked away. So he'd been hurt by abortion. We had another we were setting up one time at Surrey Hills, and we were setting up the post about 8 o'clock. And there's a guy standing out the front smoking a cigarette, and he was a Vietnamese guy. And he was watching us, and then he said, what are you doing? And we told him what we're doing. He said, "I brought my wife here last year, and now and made her have an abortion, and she hates me." And he said, I came here to say goodbye to my child. We found out later, because I got him talking to both a priest and a psychologist. We have a psychologist on our advisory panel, who's very experienced in post-abortion counselling, right? Turns out it wasn't his real wife. His first wife, he'd left and holed up with her, and he had a child with the other one, and she was feeling rejected and a whole lot of things, but she hated him for it, making her have an abortion. He'd actually come to say goodbye to the baby. He was going to then go and kill himself. He told us that, right? And because of us and his Catholic background, hadn't been practicing his faith, he started coming and praying with us quite often. I've lost contact with this guy. I only know his name and all the rest of it, but I haven't had contact for a while. We'd often find a bunch of flowers stuck on the tree. There was a tree or a telegraph pole near the abortion club, and they come out and rip them off and accuse us of putting them. We say, we don't put them there. One of the victims puts them there, we told them, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of stories about the guys, and it's abortion is damaging men and women, not just killing unborn babies, and that's damaging society because it means marriages are breaking up. Subsequent kids or prior kids are growing up in broken and fractured homes. Socially, there's a big cost. And the professions of psychiatry and psychology and medicine generally won't recognise that abortion is a trigger for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, whereas good psychologists all know it does. So we we have a massive problem, and when you have 100,000 round figures every year in Australia, and we've had that for 50 years, we've got 5 million plus unborn babies that have been killed in this country. We wouldn't have the economic problems we have now, by the way. In America, it's like 60 million in that same period. Around the world, do you know what the number is? 3 billion. Wow. We're talking about 50 million a year plus, 50 to 60 million a year for 50 plus years. That's pretty horrific. There's never been a genocide like it. And a war on the unborn.
Yeah, and it's the unspoken. It's God have mercy. It's one of the most evil things that we can do is kill our own.
Absolutely right. You brought up before, you talked about some of the other evils in the world and the things that are going on. Well, I've said for a long time, if it's okay to kill 50 to 60 million unborn kids a year around the world, or even 100,000 a year in this country, it's okay to do anything. There's no chance we can end things like the promotion of same-sex marriage, the transgender agenda, that now is, and it's as insane as it is, and as horrific as it is that's going on. How can we say, no, you can't do these things when we've facilitated even the ongoing slaughter of so many unborn children? And how many of those unborn children would have been the politicians we cry out for? Where are all the good politicians? Would have been the engineers and the scientists that would have developed maybe alternative fuels that work besides stupid wind farms. We don't know. God provided the people. We've killed them off. And you know what? The crazy thing is economic growth, which politicians love to talk about, depends on population growth. You can't have economic growth without that. And there are Nobel Prize winning economists who said that. Julian Simon for one, and I forget the other guy's name, but they've all talked about that. It's a lunacy, really. Yeah. It's the old adage that's not really able to be attributed to anyone, and it seems to be, maybe it's more modern, but the old saying, those whom the gods would destroy, they first make crazy. And it's that, because it's hard to believe that someone in their right mind can defend abortion. And even when they've seen it. And we're not talking about abortion in the first trimester even. We're talking about up to term for any and no reason.
What you just said, Paul, reminds me of when I believe it was Hillary Clinton who was speaking to Mother Teresa. Yep. Saint Mother Teresa, that is. Hillary Clinton, who's a massive advocate for the pro-choice side. And she said to Mother Teresa, why do you think there hasn't been a female American president yet? And St. Mother Teresa said, probably because she's been aborted.
That'd be Mother Teresa.
Yeah. And we a lot of us, I think, would know how strong St. Mother Teresa was. But I want to take it back just a little bit to when we were talking about the men.
Yeah.
In regards to this issue, I can imagine that there are some people, especially on the other side, who would look at this, what we're doing now, and say, well, it's three men talking about the pro-life cause, particularly about abortion.
Yep.
And they have no right to say anything and all these things. And it seems to be an issue when the men are on the other side. But when they're in agreement, they don't mind men having a say.
Yep.
Why? And I'll ask you this question. I want to share what I heard about an experience that a woman had with, I believe it was with you, and I think you'll be able to attest to that. But what I'll ask first is, do we have a say in the issue?
Of course. That's an easy answer. It may need some further explanation, but I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, please.
We sure do. Oh, you want me to now?
Yeah, please.
I thought you were going to ask me. I'll put the other thing first. But the fact is this. It's what Father said before. Men are critical to the conception in the first place. And now we live in a society where there is more and more domestic violence and where men are the villains. And clearly that's just true. And this is, of course, some men, but it doesn't get distinguished that way. And that one of the reasons for the violence in homes is abortion, for a start. Violence begets violence. So you can't have it on one way. And, it seems that the feminist agenda wants to have men that are wimpy and collaborative with whatever they want to do and achieve and whatever that they say, and that's the end of it. But you won't have a society that's defendable. You won't have an army. You won't have a police force. You won't have the people that can insist on laws being upheld if you don't have manly men. And manly men aren't violent. They're strong. They defend the women. They're there for that reason. We're there for that reason. A man is the priest, prophet, and king in his home. And that means not only is he responsible for providing for his family, he's responsible for defending them, and he's responsible for making society a better place for his children to grow up in. All those things are part of being a man and what it means to be a man. And that's what the feminist agenda and their mouthpieces, the modern media, aren't going to tell you. So you're not going to hear it peddled on the Channel 9 News or in the Daily Telegraph or the Sydney Morning Herald or any of these places, certainly not in the ABC. That's a one-way street when it comes to men.
Yes.
And that's the big problem. But what we need to do is certainly educate boys, and we need to get them off pornography, because that's another part of the reason there's so much violence against women. So all these people that peddle unmitigated and uncensored rights for what they want to do, all the wrong things, won't admit that's what's contributing to this level of violence against women. And part of that level of violence is then, if she's there as your sexual slave, you don't want her pregnant. And so why is it a surprise when she's run down to the abortion mill and forced to have abortions? And if she won't comply, why is it surprising that then she's set upon and beaten? Because they've conditioned them that way. They've put women there as sex objects. So it's not just contraception, because contraceptive use makes it seem like you're in control. It's also the immodesty. Pornography is just the extreme of that. And the pornography these days that a lot of young kids are looking at is extreme and violent. And the boys are looking at this stuff and they're wanting the girls to play the part of the porn stars. And the girls are looking at this and going, I don't want that. I don't think I'm a girl anymore. Why are clusters of girls in schools deciding that they're no longer girls, that they're boys? Why is that happening? Why has there been in the last 5 years a 5,000% increase in girls identifying as transgender? and now they're cutting their breasts off and giving them drugs and just helping them along without question, without psychiatric assessment. Well, what I said before, if you can kill that many unborn kids and for that long, you can do anything you like. And it's the God's making us crazy. Does that answer your question?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to put a bit of a bow on what you just said, this will be to a very, I suppose, sheltered audience.
Yeah.
This stuff sounds very extreme. Now, it's very important to know that this stuff is happening.
Yep.
It's been happening in the world for a while now, whilst in the scheme of the creation, it's all very new.
Yep.
But we look at places like America, it's been happening for years, and we're starting to see it more and more in Australia now. And like the whole abortion topic, no one likes to talk about it, which is why if you're a viewer at home, you're hearing this for the first time, you think, oh, that sounds like waffle, that sounds like it's made up. It's not made up, it's true. These are things that are happening. And so it's so important for us not to put the blanket over our heads and be ignorant to this stuff.
Yeah.
Part of the reason we are in the problem we're in today is because we've chosen to be silent about all of this stuff.
Yeah.
It hasn't been preached in our churches. It hasn't been spoken about at home. You're not supposed to talk about it in polite society, out of fear of offense to people. So I just wanted to put the bow on that because, Paul, this is your life. You've been on the front line for so long that this is all just so commonplace for you. And I know you wish it wasn't.
It's more like behind the front line.
Yeah. So you're there.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people aren't, whether that's because of either lack of courage or ignorance or, no, you know what? I prefer to listen what the modernists want to say about this topic and that topic and not do their research and really go into the evils that humanity is capable of. And that's why it's so important to have you here talking about this, because it's been your lived experience for so long. And not just your experience. Like, the reason Paul as a man gets to speak about this stuff is because he's spoken to over 7,000 women about the choices that they're making or not making. That's why as a man you get to speak.
By the way, exactly right. But I get photos and messages from mums and dads with their little kids growing up, going to school, getting older. That's rewarding. It's not. I have some of these girls we met some years ago who call me dad. They have not had a father figure in their life for one reason or another, and that can be like a couple of girls from Africa, East Africa, who had lived through war and saw their fathers murdered and got out of the place here and see mothers raped and all sorts of horrible things, who wanted their kids but were being forced to have abortions and took our offer of help. Like the refugee girl from Iran, they took our offer of help. A Muslim girl who'd be, if her parents knew, she'd be under a fatwa. There's some amazing stories, that's for sure, and that's right. They just need someone to say, we're there for you, we'll help you. And we've done that. FLI as an organisation spends hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't get that anymore because we're not praying outside abortion mills. And by the way, I want to make this point, it's very important. Family Life International does not run 40 Days for Life, doesn't run the Helpers of God's Precious Infants or any of those things. I wear two hats, right? Gail used to wear two hats. What we do outside abortion mills is a personal thing on our private time pretty much. But because we were finding so many of these people that did need serious help, finding some people places to live and furnishing them and helping them out with the ongoing living expenses until they get on their feet. Helping a girl that was working in an abortion mill, didn't know it was that until she got there from Nigeria. It was a nurse. And she didn't know how she was going to survive. We offered to pay her a weekly income until she could find a job. If she left, she did. Wow. There are we've spent a lot of money to do those sorts of things that up until they put bubble zones in, because we're not seeing those women. That's the real tragedy. All those people we helped over those years, where are they going now? There's no help for those people. they've abandoned them. And now, because that's a settled issue, they think, and the abortion mills can run their operations and kill their unborn babies and destroy their lives, that's the end of it. That's the end of it for the politicians and the mad feminists and others, but it's not the end of it for those people that are suffering this.
Yeah. There was a story or an experience that I heard about that I alluded to before that really struck me. I was at one of the pro-life rallies a few years ago. I think it was when the new abortion legislation was coming in, and we had I think it was Stand for Life or something like that, those rallies. And there was a woman who stood up and spoke to everyone there, and she told a story of her own experience. And she was walking in to have an abortion.
Yep.
And I believe it was you who approached her. Now, what she said was, she said, I can't remember exactly if the man in her life had just left, or if it was just like a sort of one night thing, or I don't know what it was. But she had no man in her life. She felt alone, and she was walking into this abortion clinic. And she said, all I needed was a man in my life. She said it didn't matter who it was. She just needed a man to say, I'll be there for you. And as soon as you had approached her and said, I can help you, she said her mind was changed in an instant. And I think it speaks to a lot of what you were saying and a lot of what the issue is in society, is that men are abandoning their responsibilities.
Yep.
And we can all sort of be guilty of that in one way or another. But when it comes to a time like this, or an experience where this woman, was going into for such a traumatic experience, like to end the life of your own child, she it just stood out to me. I think as someone who was probably starting to question, or starting to let the mainstream media sort of get in their head a little bit. So you try and push off a lot of what you hear, but then sometimes something can just creep in, and you go, well, as a man, what should I be here? Do I have a right to say something or whatever? And it really struck me, because she said, all I needed in that moment was a man to say, I'll help you. I don't know if this rings a bell at all with you. I couldn't see her. I don't know. I couldn't describe it to you.
I don't know if I heard that story when it was told.
Yeah.
But I've had lots of experiences like that, so I don't know who it was for sure, but there's every chance. If it wasn't me, it was someone I know.
Yeah, fair. Well, I was about to ask, is that sort of the general experience you have? Is that as soon as there's that offer of help, they're happy to go with it?
No, not always. Some are, that's right.
Yeah.
It does happen that way. They wanted to hear that. They came wanting to hear that.
Yeah.
We've had people come hoping we were there. Others who had seen before, and wanting us to help, be there to help, and being relieved and not having the abortion, keeping their baby. So there's a range of things, because whilst other people might welcome the offer of help, they can't see how we'll help in their circumstance. And when those who are meant to love them, parents, siblings, boyfriends, husbands, girlfriends, are all telling them this is not the right time, you need to have an abortion, they can't see how a stranger on the street saying, I'll help you, is going to be real help.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. But once they make up their mind, that's it, I'm keeping my baby, those people get on board usually. They say, okay, we'll help you. They give up the pushing the abortion line, and they say, well, okay, if that's what you want.
We as a humanity can fall into a different gear when there's a moment of resilience that's been asked of us. It can happen.
Yep.
And this has nothing to do with abortion, but I think it speaks to a wider mentality. Whenever I hear of a young couple getting engaged early, the societal response is a real shame a lot of the time. Oh, so young, like explore your options, or anyone that wants to push, for example, premarital sex as a healthy thing. You got to try before you buy. You got to know. You got to have some experience. Put that all out of the head. They get married. Then at the age of 22, 23 years old, they're pregnant. Oh, what a shame. So young, haven't lived life yet.
Yep.
It's such a common mentality that is poisonous to our society.
Absolutely right.
And you think to yourselves, okay, but they're married. So, okay, they've done the right thing. Now they're pregnant.
They've done the right thing.
They've done the right thing, because that's what happens when you get married.
Yep.
And now they've had their child, and all of those objections from before go out the window now, because the grandparent is like, I'm a first-time grandparent, and I'm young enough that I can actually run around with my grandchild. They see all of this, and the script flips.
Yes.
The mentalities flip. And this is what, as a society and a culture, we need to be more encouraging of and less discouraging of. But now, and you've said it a few times, this is part of the feminist way of thinking is, I need to be like a man. I need to go after what I want to go after. I need to have all my travel experiences. I need to conquer the world. I need to
insist on my rights.
Insist on my rights and climb the corporate ladder. And if that is what you want to do with your life, then go for it. But God created us for a specific purpose.
Yep.
And so when we're dumping on young people and young families, no wonder it all feeds into the mentality, doesn't it? It's like, well, you're too young to have a child now. You shouldn't.
But that's, by the way, why kids that grow up homeschooled and within the homeschool movement are often different and will get married young and have kids because they haven't had that experience. The kids are good. And another reason, by the way, why you're allowed to speak up for the unborn child, so your brothers and sisters. We forget that.
Yeah.
What did St. Paul say? Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. Yeah. That's what we're meant to do. We're meant to be there for each other. That's, if you like, the whole essence of Christianity. St. James, the apostle, said, true religion is this, to care for the widows and orphans. And if the widows and orphans of his day, the first century, are not the same as the mothers being pushed into the abortion mills to kill their kids, I don't know who is. And if we don't start to make a difference, now it's got out of hand. It's how do you roll it back? And we published that booklet on contraception because our organisation began because of contraception. Because the other pro-life groups in the 80s wouldn't take a position on contraception. They said it's a Catholic issue. That's not right. But that's what they said. And they're secular organisations. They didn't want religion involved in the argument. You'll never end abortion without God. That's the first thing. It's satanic. If you think you can win this without God, good luck. You're losing, right? And the proof is in the pudding. It's getting worse. So Gail started our organisation. She called that, in 1987, Australian Catholic Pro-Life Association. And she became a branch and set up as a branch of Human Life International based in America, established by a Benedictine monk, Father Paul Marks, who Pope John Paul said, you do the greatest work in the world, the most important work, rather, in the world. So that became Human Life International. That's become Family Life. It's the same organisation, but it was set up because of the issue of contraception. And Gail recognised that we need to educate Catholics. This is in the 80s. This is like nearly 40 years ago. We need to educate Catholics on the issue of contraception and its relationship to abortion, and how if we don't end contraceptive use, we'll never end abortion. And by the way, if anyone has doubts that that's connected, because I've even had abortionists say to me, you'd be handing out contraceptives if you were really against abortion. And I've said to him, you know that's what gets them here, right? And he just walked off. He knew too. The Alan Guttmacher Institute is the research arm of the International Planned Parenthood Federation, the biggest abortion promoters and peddlers and providers in the world. Everyone's heard of Planned Parenthood. They say that's the case, by the way. So it's not just our side saying that. It's obvious to anyone that knows anything about it, that's the case.
And for those at home that want, they're like, well, is what Father Ben and Anthony and Paul saying, is this all true? Go to the Guttmacher Institute website, and the statistics are on their website, readily available.
Yep.
So they don't even hide this stuff.
They'll admit it.
It's all there. You spoke briefly about an interaction you had with one of the so-called doctors at these abortion mills. I'm sure, as you said, if you're there, you're spending a lot of time there, you're running into employees of the place, these so-called doctors. You're there and having interactions with them. What's that like?
Well, it's interesting. They're all different, of course. You don't leave school and take up medicine and do all the study and become a doctor to do abortions. Nobody does that. How do they end up doing that? Well, all sorts of reasons, all sorts of problems. They've got personal life issues. They're whatever they're doing, they're not that good at medicine, and they end up doing this. So that's the first thing. Not to say they're all that. There's some. We found out tragically, after four of our children were born, that the obstetrician we were going to was the medical director of preterm abortion mill at Surrey Hills. Surrey Hills then. It's an intimate thing, the doctor relationship, patient relationship when it comes to pregnancy and having. And he was very good. He said to me during one of the deliveries, he's got a great job bringing new life into the world and stuff like this. He'd say those sort of things, right? And then I found this out. I wanted Chris to change. I wanted to go somewhere else. She didn't want to. We ended up keep it for our younger son, Peter. And I saw him then outside the abortion mill at preterm, just as we were setting up just about to start running there. We closed down one in Newtown, and so we moved here. And there's a bit of a changeover period. The cops wanted us to wait till after World Youth Day, basically. After Mardi Gras in 2007 it was, that they wanted us to wait in that anyway. And I saw him with a coffee walking down the street. A lady that had been going there a lot, Carolyn, who was well known, she'd wear the pictures around her like an A-frame thing over her head. Yeah. Carolyn, she's a smart lady. She's a bit odd, but she's very smart, right? And she's got a science degree. She runs rings around most people when it comes to the debate. But he starts abusing Carolyn. And I said, oi, Dr. Brodie. Dr. Harmston. He just ignored me. I said, I've sent it out again. Chris Harmston. I said, what do you want? I said, don't you remember me? You delivered our 5 children. And now I find you're doing this. He's doing this then. He's starting to get the shakes. And don't you bother praying for me, all this. I said, well, I'm going to pray for you anyhow because you sure need prayers, right? And that's obvious anyway. I never saw him again there. I don't know what happened. Yeah. He left, went to Queensland. I think he retired, but I don't know. But that's a tragedy. Yeah. Whereas Brodie at Newtown, whose place we ended up closing, he'd come out and talk to me. He came up to me once, put his arm around my shoulders and said, what do you call people on NFP? I said, what? Parents. And he starts laughing. I said, isn't that wonderful? And he'd say things like the contraception one, all those sort of things. And I'd say to him, come and have a coffee. We'll have a coffee. And at one stage there was some people in the neighbourhood organised big protests. And they started off with 50 or 60, and over 6 months it ended up with 5 or 6. They won't keep it up. And at one stage there was a guy there. He's an advocate for the refugee free access, basically. He's an idiot, right? But he's nasty. And he'd come over and he'd make all sorts of threats to me and blah, blah, blah. The cops were always there with him, I reckon. And they didn't like him because they were professional protesters. The cops don't like that. Mm. But he thought not only should abortion be available up to birth, but after birth. If the kid's disabled and all these things, if the parents can't cope, I think he used to say 6 months. Now, the organisers of the protests, these 2 women that lived nearby, they sure didn't think that. because I would talk to them, say, do you know that this is what you're attracting, right? And I said this to Brody, the doctor. Oh, no, that's terrible. He said, no. We won't do them past 18 weeks, he said. I said, why 18 weeks? Well, you've got to draw a line somewhere. I said, well, but how'd you come up with that? Why not 17? Why not 19? Oh, he doesn't know what to say, right? It's random. And I was always, my objective was make them think about what they're doing. Wanda, who's a psychologist, would say you got to actually, you can't just speak, obscurely about these unborn babies. You've got to make them a real person. This little person. We'd say to people going in, have you got a name? Do you know if it's a boy or a girl? Stuff like this. So build a bond. And we never say don't kill your baby. We'd say don't let them kill your baby. It was always that approach, right? Us and them. We're on your side. We want to help you. Yeah. And it was the same with him. Like, think about this. And they didn't know. He'd be talking to me and he'd get these nervous twitches, and I'll buy you a coffee. Let's go and have a coffee, have a chat, stuff like that with him. But never happened. I still pray for, by the way, although doctors and staff, a lot of staff, I pray for. Yeah, by name. Yep.
Yeah. It's funny, like, even the approach that you're taking here, like, these are men and women, doctors. For those of you that aren't watching, I'm using air quotes because they're not doctors. These are people who you want to engage with in conversation. You're looking at their humanity.
Yep.
You want to have civil discourse with them. And just to give you a little bit of a take on my very first experiences when I used to come and pray outside the clinics, it was the first time in my life that I experienced evil. Evil manifest.
Yep.
I remember people walking up to us and we'd just be praying and they would be screaming in our faces. And then the instances you have here with particular doctors or nurses arguing with you or raising their voices to you or trembling, not knowing what to say. It's funny that evil always looks the same.
Yep.
It always sounds the same. We have truth and reason and logic on our side. We have God on our side. And we want to inherently do the right thing, even to the people who are doing the evil.
Yep.
We want them to come into the love of God.
Yep.
And all you want to do is talk. But when a person doesn't have truth on their side, they don't want to talk.
Absolutely right.
So I just want to talk about that just for one.
Well, I can.
Yeah.
There used to be a guy come and pray with us, and he'd want to just stand with us on the count, but he didn't counsel. He'd just watch. And he's a Maronite, and he would say after people go past abusing me, or us, the other counsellors, Paul, he'd say, why won't they just stop and talk reasonably? And I'd just laugh. I go, what reasonable thing are they think they're going to say?
Yeah.
I said, we got all the arguments. That's the sad thing for them. There is no way to defend what they want to do. They just want to shout you down. That's why they do that. Because if they stop and talk reasonably, they start coming around. That's exactly right. And the other thing I wanted to speak to that is this, that Monsignor Riley, I've told you at the start, the influence he's a living saint. He's in a nursing home now and he's dying. He's had all his nose removed from cancer. And that's from being fair-skinned on the street in the summer in New York especially, for ridiculous 40 years or something that he did this, right? And 50 years. He's the most remarkable of men. So he was rector at the seminary in Brooklyn. He was had advanced degrees in the classics, in literature and Latin and Greek, stuff like this. He used to teach the classics in himself. He was a Grand Masters level chess player. So he's smart. He just also was good at sport. He played basketball, played golf off scratch. One of these people can do anything, right? So Monsignor Riley, and he's got all the charm of his parents were Irish immigrants to the United States. He grew up in America himself, in an Irish home in Brooklyn in New York. But he would, when we first came across Monsignor Riley, it was like, wow. this guy's got it to get. He really understood what was going on, and his whole thing was a spiritual approach. He said, we do not go, our primary reason for going is not to save babies. That sounds a contrary thing to say. It's to save souls. We won't save babies if we're not there to save souls. We want to save babies, but that's not our primary purpose. So he redirected our focus pretty much, and that was, I first met him in 95. So to that end, which is why we say, his argument was, the babies will be with God one way or the other. And I know we don't need to go down the baptism is limbo a real place, all those things. That's a whole topic, right? But that's basically was his position. But the mums and dads and the doctors and nurses are in serious trouble if they don't repent. That's why we'd also speak to them coming out and offer them help, because that matters. Their soul matters. And if you have this idea that at the end of the day, your vocation, and in fact, the vocation of everybody that's a member of the Catholic Church, is saving souls. There's no other reason for us to exist. The church exists for that. And that changes the way you then look at everybody. So we had a woman that used to work in these places, a nurse. we thought she was possessed. Like she would... You ever see those movies, the horror movies, where the devil's got possession and you see the look change from a normal person to this horrible image? And it was like that almost with her. She'd come out to all nice, come with me, dear, you don't need to talk to these people, and walk me inside and turn and look at us. We go, whoa, it's like this. We had a religious nun who'd say, don't look at her, Paul, she'll cast a spell on you. She was convinced she was possessed, right? But I'd talk to her. And then it happens that I suffer from allergies, and I got referred to the Royal Prince Alfred Allergy Clinic to get these injections. And I had a doctor that was looking after me there, and then I realised she works there as well. I used to say to Gail and the others, if I turn up dead, you know what's happened, right? They gave me something else. Well, anyway, this doctor I had, he had to retire because he had his own health problems, and guess who was going to be looking after me? This same woman. Now, this woman who was a scowl at me, I walked past her in the street when our office was actually nearby this allergy clinic one stage, and I walked past, she'd say, crawl back into the hole you came out of, and stuff like this, right? This is how she'd talk to me. Well, then she realised she was going to be seeing me for this, the immunisation therapy, and she came out for smoke outside a preterm at Surrey Hills, and she started talking to me. And she's a fair distance away, and they shouldn't be talking about this. She walks up to me. Gail's standing there going, what on earth? And another guy, Ben Donahue, one time brought the posters back, and I'd been away in New Zealand. They wanted me to run a 40 Days for Life training thing over there and speak at a conference. And we had a bit of a holiday, and then I came back sick, and I was away for a few weeks from the place. And Gail said, she's been asking, Kate's her name, she's been asking, where's Paul? And as soon as I was back, she's straight over. Gail said I didn't see her coming. She came from behind me. Hi, Paul, how are you? Like best friends, right? And Ben didn't know all this other stuff. He just knew her from both Newtown and Surrey Hills and what she was like. And he's standing there, gobsmacked, right? And she says, I better go in, or they'll think I'm consorting with the enemy. And I said, you know we're not the enemy, Kate? She goes, yeah, I'll try telling Margaret that. Margaret was the clinic manager, right? You try telling Margaret that, right? So she went from very hostile. And I've had people walking, people lived in the neighbourhood who would abuse it across the road and yelling out all sorts of horrible things about us and da-da-da and this and that. And got talking to me. Came down the street, he saw a show on SBS about young teenage girls getting pregnant and getting run off to abortion clinics. They don't want to go there, they want to have their babies. It was on SBS of all places. And so he's come down the road one day and he goes, because he starts saying, I like Paul, but I don't agree with you, right? I agree with you. He's coming down the road, he's for 50 minutes, I agree with you, saying this. I think, well, you give people a chance, right? Yeah. You don't know their story. And if we're reasonable people, another guy who was an active homosexual as well, who lived nearby, came in, he was into me one day, and I don't know, and I didn't see him for a few months. Next time I saw him, he was telling me, the first time I met you, I was so angry the rest of the day, all day. And he said, you know why? I went, no. Because you are so sure of yourself. That drove him crazy. Yeah. Well, we are sure of ourselves. We know what's right. We know what's true. And that's easy to defend. But you don't have to see, I wasn't nasty to him. And he ended up becoming very powerly with us, starting to defend us with other people and stuff like that. So you don't know their story, and it's worthwhile listening. Yep.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and something really profound was said. It was the Francis Tamer show, and he had Christian Stevens on. So Christian Stevens is a philosopher and I believe theologian as well. Anyway, teaches at the University of Notre Dame. And they were talking about some social media famous guy or someone, I don't know, who said, who's talking about what it takes to be a high value man. And some of he had a whole list of things, and some of them were don't have kids, don't have a family. They were all around, don't get married, whatever. So it was all around this whole family, stay away from the whole family thing. Just care about yourself, worry about yourself. Yeah. One of them was lift at the gym or something like that, So it was all just take care of yourself. Don't worry about anyone else sort of thing. And Christian Stevens said something that was really powerful. He said, and I really encourage people to listen to that podcast. It was brilliant. And I'll probably butcher it the way I say it. Christian Stevens said it really well, but he said, this man who seems to know what it takes to be a high value man, he said he wouldn't even exist. He wouldn't be nurtured. He wouldn't have been taken care of. He wouldn't be healthy if he was surrounded by people who thought the same way he did. So, and I listened back to this a million times to try and understand what he was saying exactly. Mm. And it's so true. It's if his own, and Christian goes on to say this, but if his own father thought the way that he did, then his father wouldn't have got married, had a child, had him. Educated him, taken care of him, all that sort of thing. And it's a similar thing to this is, you sort of hear, there's a quote, I don't know who said it. They said, it's funny, everyone that's for abortion is born, something like that.
Ronald Reagan.
Along those lines. Oh, was it Ronald Reagan? Mm. Oh, there you go.
He's got a lot of good one-liners about it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah. And it's a similar thing. They both relate. It's, you have the privilege to be born, to be alive,
yep,
to breathe and to think the way that you do. You're free to do all these things because you were born, because of that fundamental right to life.
It is. It's fundamental to everything. That's right.
Yeah. No. It's the.
You're not born. You don't have any rights.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly right. Exactly right. So, it seems to be more than just a thought that, well, it's okay to to abort babies. It's okay to euthanize people, whatever. It seems more than just a line of thinking. It seems like more of a response to a hurt or a wound that's been in their life. I know you sort of touched on it a little bit. Has that been a lot of your experience?
There's definitely a link between past abuse, physical and sexual abuse, and abortion. That's well known. It's not just that, though. But the abortion itself can lead to that subsequently. So not feeling worthwhile, not feeling worthy to have anything good. Most couples, where there's an abortion, don't stay together. That's the first thing. So if you're married or you've got other children, that's very damaging to those kids. And how you relate to those kids. We're fragile things at the end of the day. And we have these things God gave us orderedly, disordered now because of original sin. called passions. And those passions get out of whack, and that's where all the problems start. And the fact is, we tend not to look at others as valuable as we look at ourselves. So that's where all the problems start. Self, pride. That's why the virtues that'll get you to heaven, particularly, are humility and purity. And it's a very hard world to be pure in. So you better be humble. And it's a battle, you know. The thing is, all this stuff we're talking about and all those things I've experienced, I'm kind of overwhelmed and a little bit by it and humbled by it, because it's not me that did that. I'm a good mouthpiece, sure, but I think quick on my feet, I suppose. I've got a good memory, all those sorts of things, but that's why God used me. I couldn't have done any of that without God. That wouldn't have happened without God. I can't open my mouth and speak without God, right? That's the thing. We forget that we owe what we have to God, and we tend to forget that. And it's a battle every day. That's why we've got to be constantly praying and constantly, seeking God's forgiveness for our own sinfulness. So how do we go and judge someone else then? Yeah. If we're conscious of that all the time, that's important, right? That's how I look at it.
We can't have this conversation without speaking directly to the outliers when it comes to this debate, to this topic. I've done several years now in high schools, and I've been able to, in the classroom where the teacher has had the backbone to say, Father Ben, I want you to talk about this. I want you to question the students. I want you to hear what the students want to say to us. I've had 15, 16-year-old girls just almost like it's automatic, like it's clockwork. When it comes to this topic, throw the slogans out, my body, my choice. I've also had them throw the outliers out, and we need to address the outliers. So when I talk about outliers, I'm talking about abortion should be permissible in instances of rape or sexual harassment. It should be permissible in instances of health of the mother. It should be accessible in instances of if the child is severely deformed and is not going to live any kind of life. Mm-hmm. What do you say to people who have that mindset? Mm-hmm. Because it's an all or nothing thing.
Yep.
Life is life.
That's right.
Okay, so let us know.
You can't qualify under this circumstance. And a lot of people think that way. It's not surprising that kids in schools are thinking that way when probably their parents and their parents even maybe thought that way. And that's certainly what they're taught. Well, they're all sort of different. And I'll talk about them individually, like the rape situation and their disabilities and anything else. I know quite a few women who were raped and had babies, and I've met women who were raped and had abortions. In every case, the one that had the baby has healed much more from the rape than those that had the abortion, because it's a well-known fact in psychology that the worst thing for someone who's been through a trauma is to be traumatized again. And if you're going to say rape is traumatic, and it is, then you've got to admit also abortion is a trauma, because it is. It's not something anyone takes lightly. Even the most hardened abortion advocate, when if it came to themselves having it, is going to be emotional and hurt and suffer from it to some degree. So the worst thing for someone who's raped is to have an abortion. And I've, of course, got a lot of stories about those girls. One girl said to me outside of the place, she was just going past, what do you know about, how would you like to be dragged off into an alley and raped? I just said to her, and she was quite aggressive when I first started talking to her. And I said, I just looked into her eyes and I said, do you know someone like that? It was clearly her. And she started crying. 5 minutes she's crying on my shoulder and we're talking about it, right? And, the abortion hadn't helped her. As bad as the rape is, the abortion's not there. The baby's an innocent victim as well. If you want to kill someone, go after the rapist. I'm all for that, right? I'm not an advocate for capital punishment necessarily for those things, but I'm saying that makes more sense. Get the rapist and kill him. Lock him up at least, but don't kill the unborn baby. He's another innocent victim. And we had an occasion where a woman had been raped and the rapist was a policeman. She never reported it because she figured that won't go well for her. And she had a little baby. She kept the baby. Little baby's name was Maria. Sorry, her name was Maria. Little baby's name was Rose. And she had another daughter who was a teenager and going off the rails when all this happened. And it brought Maria back to her faith. And she started coming with us, and she'd have the little baby Rose in the stroller, and she'd want to stand with us, the counsellors. She wouldn't counsel, but she'd be with us. And the prayer group was across the road at Newtown in Salisbury Road. And there was quite a few of them. This day would have been 30, and a car stops on that side of the road, and a girl gets out, comes down, and the guy that's leading the prayers, do you know Anna Hitchings? Anyway, her dad. He's leading the prayers, and she comes up this close, right? 6 inches away, and just lets them have it. Yeah, people, this, that, and the other, and like, it was clear what was going on. She'd been raped and had an abortion, what she was saying. And I just looked at Maria, I said, she's not going to listen to me, but will you come and talk to her? She said, okay. So we went across the road together, and Maria walked up to this woman, put her arm around her shoulders and said, I understand. And the girl looked at her and teared up, and they walked off and spoke for about 10 minutes. The girl walked up the road, got back in the car and just went without saying another word. Doesn't get, the juxtaposition, the two positions doesn't get clearer, right? Yeah. As bad as, and by the way, how many rapes are covered up by abortion? How many rapists get away with it? How many incestuous ones or pedophiles get away with it and cover up the rape by having the abortion, the girl having an abortion? It's not helping women that are raped. Abortion's not helping them. And so the disability one's a tougher one for a lot of people because it depends on the degree of disability. If you're talking about a hair lip or something, it's insane that they'd be aborting babies for that. But they can, if it's a disability, and they're going to see problems with it, and if you're facilitating that, then that's okay, right? But if it's spina bifida or something serious, there's a young couple that comes to Mass at Lewisham, and he's got a sister that's spina bifida, and his parents are saints. So the only way I put it, a lot of pressure on them to have an abortion in the first place, and then even to let the baby die after the baby was born by doctors in the hospital. That's horrific in itself. And they know, and they've raised this girl, looked after her and had 5 other kids. Quite remarkable, some people. There's saints among us, and they're often not known. And that's the thing is this. If we put to death anyone with a disability, does that improve society or not? Sure it doesn't. What would improve society is if we all took responsibility for the care of those special people. We haven't had to suffer that ourselves. I haven't had that experience in my family when I was a kid with any siblings or with my own family, our children. But I know plenty of people who have, and it's an onerous task. There's another older couple with a 40-year-old son who lost oxygen, and he's got cerebral palsy, and he's in a wheelchair a lot of the time. And Andrew's a wonderful young guy, but the parents say he brought them back to their faith. You know, it's a harder thing to address, that one, with someone who's got no faith than it is with someone of faith, clearly. But the only way you can appeal to somebody is a common humanity that little baby shares and is destined for eternity with God. And the fact is, if God willed their existence, there's a good reason for it, and it's usually our own salvation, and that's where I think I'd be focusing the discussions.
It shows you what we as a humanity are able to do in a good way when we rally behind those who suffer, and when we support those who suffer, when we become a voice for those who are less vulnerable.
More vulnerable.
Yes, more vulnerable. And I just see it in the way people change.
Yeah.
A couple who have, they've got their whole lives ahead of them, they get this diagnosis and, okay, we're going to go through this. We're going to go through it. And they go from turning in on themselves into, okay, our life now is about this child.
Yep.
And you just see it. And the cultural response, as we see, which is generally narcissistic and selfish and motivated in different ways, look at the cultural response as it has now extended to euthanasia laws.
Yep.
Okay, you're too difficult to look after.
That can be psychiatric illnesses.
Yeah, you can end it. So it's so important. Now, what about instances of health of the mother?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an easier one because there's mostly lies when it comes to that. The fact is, most issues where mum's life could be in danger from the pregnancy don't become obvious at least till later in the second trimester. When babies can be born, delivered safely, and it's less traumatic on the mum than late-term abortions. And late-term abortions can't happen immediately, so if there's something urgently, a caesarean can be performed and the baby saved at anything over 25 weeks, certainly. There's issues with the baby, obviously, and once it gets into 30 plus weeks, less issues. But they can be saved and mum looked after immediately. If they're going to have a late-term abortion, they can't do that. It takes several days to prepare the cervix to dilate, give it the drugs or laminaria rods or whatever it's going to take. So there's a whole lot of issues with that. And there is very little real illnesses or problems that present themselves where abortion solves the problem. None, in fact. And by the way, I've had those discussions with plenty of people who have gone past the abortion clinic and stopped to engage with me and tell me that they tell me they're doctors and they bring up all these things, right? I end up saying to them, well, you should know better. And a lot of women would turn up at the abortion mill and say, my doctor said I've got to have an abortion because. And I'd say, well, that's not right, but I can get a guy on the phone who's an obstetrician. Will you talk to him? And I'd ring up Simon McCaffrey. And he was great because he saw a call coming in from Paul Hanrahan. He was in delivery rooms and he'd answer it, right? He'd walk out of the church if he was at mass and things. And he'd talk to them and he'd say, come and see me. And they'd come and see him and he'd, no problems. A lot of lies when it comes to that one that are peddled. And he would get so upset that doctors were saying this. Is it a pregnancy that requires some management? Certainly is. But do we need to abort the baby to save the mother? That's just not true.
Yeah, I have a question about that. It's something I'm a bit confused with, is I know that there are cases where the mother's life is at jeopardy and in jeopardy, I should say, sorry. And there's sort of like the necessary treatment for her would mean that an indirect consequence is the death of the baby.
Yep.
In the womb.
Yes.
Is that sort of different to what you're talking about?
Firstly, we need to distinguish those. Those are usually ectopic pregnancies we're talking about. So where the baby's implanted in the fallopian tube, not in the womb. So the baby's not going to survive either if left there. I would be inclined to think, and I stand to be corrected by specialists, but these days with the technology they have available, that those babies could be reimplanted. I don't know. but I'd have thought medical science has got to a stage, especially the embryonic sciences. There are some amazing stories and photos, videos of doctors operating on babies in utero with the little fingers, little hands holding the baby doctor's fingers and things like that. But whether they can do that or not, I don't know. But I'd be interested in that. But in any case, that as the baby grows, if it's in the fallopian tube, that fallopian tube will rupture, the baby will die, and so will mum, likely, right? So you can't leave it there. That's the tragic effect then. So because you're not operating to kill the baby, you're operating to save the mother. The fallopian tube has to be removed. In that case, the baby's going to then die as a consequence. It's a little bit different to a baby implanted in the womb and developing healthily, where there's potentially some issue with mum. And look, by the way, one of my son's wife nearly lost her life because of septicemia, because there was a problem with the pregnancy, lost the baby at 18 weeks, and it was very tragic, Glenn. A lot of people knew about that story back in 2019, and she spent 8 weeks in hospital, 4 in intensive care, several days in a coma, medically induced coma. Could have died. They rushed her. She was at Blacktown Hospital, and they got an intensive care ambulance with 2 specialists to bring a machine called ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It stands for, it's an advanced heart-lung machine, and it's only available with the highest category hospitals, the big ones. St Vincent's had one, and obviously one wasn't available at Westmead, so they brought it from St Vincent's with a police escort to put her on that night, to hook her up to it. They couldn't take her to it. She'd have died on the way. And they told us, if this doesn't work, there's a good chance she won't make it through the next day. A heart specialist told me each organ that starts to fail in these sort of cases decreases your risk of survival by 20%. She had 3 organs failing. It was pretty serious. So anyway, she survived. It's an amazing story. So there are some serious things that can come as a consequence. The baby was lost, though, because she miscarried the baby early. It wasn't an ongoing pregnancy. And so, septicemia is a big problem. Things like that are problems, but they're different to the ectopic pregnancy, that's for sure. Yeah. I don't know if I've answered that enough for you.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
It's just by way of thinking about this, it's interesting the lengths we will go to preserve a human life.
Yep.
When it's
Wanted.
outside of the room and wanted, yes. But then there'll be some people who think, well, it would have just been easier, early stage, to abort, and then you wouldn't have these issues later on.
Mm.
I hope people can hear and see the erroneous thought that is.
Yeah.
It's not a logical thought. It's not a reasonable thought. It's more so a thought to convenience, to ease. And it's literally, for us as Christians, it's not pick up your cross and follow me.
Correct, yeah.
So we need to think a lot deeper about these things. Now,
Can I to bring up something along
please.
that line?
Please.
The thing is, once a baby's born, parents will die for those kids, to save those kids. And we had a tragic story of a young couple from India on a station at Carlton, not that long ago, a few weeks ago, where the pram, twin baby girls in the pram, rolled off the platform onto the tracks, and a train coming. And Dad, without hesitation, jumped onto the tracks to save the babies and got hit by the train and killed, and one of the babies was killed. But one got saved. Now that's the right instinct. That's to risk your life. It's a tragedy that's happened. But what people don't get, they had aborted those little twin girls in the womb. That's as big a tragedy. That's the same little person. We don't seem to want to recognise the humanity of the unborn. That's the big problem we have. Yeah.
in the day and age of, discrimination and you can't discriminate or this is insensitive or whatever, we do seem to discriminate quite a bit about stages of life.
By the way, we did marriage preparation years ago with a couple, and they had the fourth child. Mum was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and that needed surgery, and they couldn't operate while she was pregnant. I think it was brain tumour, and she ended up dying, but giving birth to a little boy, who's now an adult boy. Wouldn't have any of the treatment that required until she'd had the baby because she didn't want to have that affect the baby. Well, that's heroic, saintly. And the other thing is, especially as Catholics, we know this is our temporary home, not home. Yeah. If you die when you're 20, Saint Therese, I think of Saint Therese of Lisieux, some people take 20 years to accomplish their mission and others 80. We don't know. It's up to God, right? So we can't deny these little people that opportunity to live the life God wants them to live. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there's an ethical question, because you brought it up. I want to ask it. Should that mother, and this is a woman who is deep into her faith and understands what she wants to do, that was her choice.
Yes.
Okay. Should a person who finds themselves in a pregnancy have an illness that needs to be treated, if they're going to treat the illness and the indirect result is the loss of the child, there's nothing wrong with that decision being made?
No.
Okay. I need to make sure that our viewers and listeners, because we've got quite the vast audience there, so I'm just trying to pick up on what they might consider inconsistencies.
Sure, understand that. Yep.
There are no inconsistencies in that frame of thought.
No.
Okay, so we're talking here about, for example, the potential of or what did happen, a diagnosis which needed treatment. The mother chose to forego the treatment and to give birth to the baby, and that was her choice. But if another person found themselves in the same situation and they chose to accept the treatment and the result, which was indirect, was the loss of the child, there's nothing wrong with that.
No. Okay. And the treatments can be managed quite well, and it's possible for both to survive. But there's risks with a lot of the treatments, yeah.
Okay. Now, Paul, I want to touch on something, and I got your permission before the show started. You've spoken about all of this, about women in crisis situations, people that are unsure. You've been on, like I've said, the front lines many times. You're a hardened man because of all of this. Like, you've seen evil.
Yeah.
You've seen it with your own eyes. And to some, it might think, well, this guy, like, as you said, with that guy on the street, this guy's pretty sure of himself. He knows what he's talking about, this, that, the other. Like, you wouldn't know what it's like. You wouldn't know what it's like. But look, you do know what it's like. You've suffered and experienced loss in your own life.
Yeah.
And I suppose in that wound, you're able now to even in a different way speak to people who have lost and who are grieving.
Yes.
Do you want to talk to us a little bit, and thank you for this being vulnerable, about the experience that you've had in your own family?
Sure. Okay. So Peter was our youngest son. Came into the world in the year 2000. Just to preempt that a little bit, one of the great teachers I had in my life helped me in my faith journey after I came back to practicing my faith was a Jesuit priest. I don't want to make jokes about the Jesuits, so I shouldn't do that. But he was a good one, and a traditional one.
There's the joke.
Yeah. His name was Peter Paul Little, Father Peter Paul Little. And he was quite a character and quite brilliant. But he had a big impact on my life. Peter Paul Little died on the feast of Peter and Paul in 1999. And about a month after that, we found out our son was on the way, and that's why he's called Peter. That's why he was called Peter. We have a Ryan, our eldest son is Ryan Paul from me, so he couldn't get Paul, but he's Peter Andrew for obvious reasons. And Peter was a 4.5 year gap between the next youngest, our daughter, and he was a beaut little bloke, and we thought for many years he was going to be a priest because how he was named, but he'd play at home, he'd dress up and be a priest and say mass. And we started going to the Latin Mass at Lewisham and the side altars. When he's only like 3 and 4, he's saying mass on the side altar while mass is happening, right? And stuff like this. When he was maybe 7 or 8, we'd been for a walk up. We walk up the street to the Royal National Park, and he came with us one day. And on the way back, he says, "I don't know if I want to be a priest, Dad." He says, he looks at his mother and said, "I think I'd like someone like Mum to love." Wow, and he'd be really helpful for his mother. He'd say things like, "Is there anything else I can do to help your Mum?" These sorts of things. But he was a young man with all the other challenges young men find, and because we homeschooled and he's a bit younger than his siblings, and he was periods where he didn't think he had enough friends or wanted friends, and our kids all played sports and different things, and they had cousins and stuff like that, but he was a bit younger, like that's the thing with a lot of them. And anyhow, he had a tough time in his mid-teens and went through a period of eventually giving up his faith for a while, not practicing his faith and questioning everything and moving out of home. But all our kids, as kids growing up, we would say the rosary every day, the family rosary. And we say morning and evening prayer every day as well with all the kids. They all had their own books of morning and evening prayer, and we do it as a family all the time. Habits are really important, and they come back in a good way. Well, his mother asked him what brought him back, and he said, "I started saying the rosary again." He'd stopped, clearly, and given up that and going to Mass. Came back to his faith, and it was about 18 months later then, came back home, and he was really keen. His siblings were all married with kids, and he wanted to be married and have kids. He started talking about that. And a couple of girls he liked. These sorts of, the heartbreaks and all the stuff happened. But Pete was 21 because he was born in the year 2000. So in 2021, he was 21 in April. In May, he had this seizure at night. We heard this banging and then like boom, boom, boom on the wall, the floor, whatever, and rushed into his room. And he was frothing at the mouth and sweating, and the blankets had been thrown off, and we couldn't wake him up. Got him on his side, cleaned up the saliva and stuff. Then next morning he didn't remember a thing. But clearly he organised a visit to the doctor. He went and saw a neurologist, specialist at Cogra. He referred him on, where you did a lot of tests. A sleep-deprived MRI, I think he had to have. That means we had to keep him awake all night and bring him back in the morning. Now, my wife won't mind me saying this because she knows it's true. She can't stay awake. There's no way she's going to do this, right? So I had to stay awake and drive him over there. Anyway, that was fun, but he did MRIs, ECGs, EEGs, all these things. Nothing showed that could have caused that on its own. Late October, he had another one of these. He was worried about it being they referred him off to an epilepsy specialist at Prince of Wales at Randwick. He saw him. They couldn't say it was epilepsy because we found out later they need to have 2 episodes, or they have to need some diagnosis to show it. And there's nothing in his tests that would indicate that. And so they said, we can't say it's that at this stage. And he didn't want it to be that because he was worried about restrictions on licenses and all this. A young guy, he's working and all that stuff. And he had another one late October, and we hadn't got him back to the doctors, and he didn't want to go. But it wouldn't have mattered anyway, they tell us. He died on the 11th of November, Remembrance Day. There was no seizure or fits like that. We heard his alarm going off in the morning at 5:30. By the way, he'd started getting up at 5:30. He had to be at his boss's place just after 6:30 to go off to start working. They were doing lawns and gardens and stuff like that. He was keen to, and the guy that he worked for wasn't Catholic, and he loved Pete because he was a guy his age that would actually turn up and work really hard. He couldn't believe his luck, right? So he was really, they got on really well. They go to the footy together, both St George supporters, right? They go off to the footy together. And he started getting up at 5:30. He said, Mum, if you hear me getting up earlier, it's because I'm getting up to say my prayers. So you've got to put God first, Mum. Stuff like this, he'd say. So he didn't wake up, and we went in, and that's how we found him. He'd passed. When the coroners were dreadful, to say the least. So that's a whole experience you don't want to ever have to go through, I guess. But because you report someone's died, the police come, they got to bring the crime scene examiners, all this stuff, and the coroners come take his body. They couldn't find anything. They do all the tests. They want to keep him. They want to do all more, and you're not going to really get an opportunity to say no. They're going to bad luck. 14 months before we got a coroner's report, and that's because I chased them up. And in 14 months, they hadn't written to any doctors that had treated him. So he'd seen 2 specialists and his GP, and no one even got a letter. And Chris, when we found that out, she rang the specialist, that neurologist, and said, "Did you know?" They didn't even know. And they clearly let then the epilepsy guy know, because he wrote to us, "You might want to come and see me. You do come, make an appointment." So we did. And he told us if they knew about the second seizure, they'd have said for sure it's epilepsy. And it's a grand mal. And those night seizures are deadly. That's a common, they've had people in hospitals on monitors, but not alarmed, and they've died in front of them. The nurses weren't paying attention. He said, you can be right next to someone and they die, you wouldn't know. They just stop breathing. So it's a peaceful death, which we're happy about. But more happy we were that on the Sunday he'd gone to confession. This was a early Thursday morning. Went to bed Wednesday night, didn't wake up. The 11th of November was also his anniversary of his confirmation. And his confirmation saint was Jared, after Jared Magella. I don't know if you know the story about Jared Magella, but that's worth exploring. It's amazing. And he died not unlike him, in the middle of the night, on his own, facing the wall. He died on his stomach. We didn't usually sleep like that, but he was turned to the wall. There was a crucifix right there. He was kind of looking at it, almost so. But he'd been to confession, and the priest he went to confession with, I know very well, and he told Father Wong, and Father Wong told us, and Father Minton told us afterwards, he made a good confession. He wouldn't have just said that to console us if it wasn't true. We know that. He did, in other words. Now, here's the other thing. Because the apostolic blessing and the last rites or none of those things, Father Wong was quite disturbed. A young person dying, and he didn't get to give them the last rites and the apostolic blessing. And then he found out that we'd done the rosary the night before, the whole rosary. So Father Wong says to me, "So you did the joyful mysteries, Mr. Hanrahan?" I said, "Yes, Father." "And the sorrowful mysteries?" I said, "Yes, Father." "And the glorious mysteries?" "Yes, Father." "Did you do the indulgence prayer at the end for the Holy Father?" I said, "Yes, Father," in Latin. So, well, that's a plenary indulgence. That's the remarkable thing. He said, did it in family, right? So, and I asked Peter, do you want to do, it's unusual that I hadn't done any of the rosary. It's my custom to do all mysteries, but I hadn't done them, and it was, he'd come home and he'd shower and all the rest of it come down. Before dinner, I said, I've got to do the rosary, and would you like to say it with me? Yep, sure. Chris did the joyful mystery. She'd already done some rosary, and she said, I've got to get dinner. She said, do you want to do the sorrowful mysteries, Peter? Yep, sure. How about the glorious? Yep. I didn't twist his arm. I didn't encourage him. I didn't badger him. I didn't any of that thing. I feel that's what people will think, right? No, he was happy to do it. And that's a great blessing. And you know what? All our children had done the 9 First Fridays. And it's the promise of the Sacred Heart for those who do the 9 First Fridays, die a good death, basically. And he did. So we kind of have that experience as a consolation. If he died not practicing his faith, living a dissolute life in any way, we'd be probably inconsolable. And I don't know how people without faith deal with it. We know how we've dealt with it. It's sure not easy, and it's a lot of heartache involved, but we've got a great consolation, a great gift that our faith tells us he's in a better place. I said in the eulogy before Mass when he died at his funeral, if we could bring him back, he'd probably be upset with us. So yeah, it's a difficult thing, but it's like we know a lot of people who have lost kids. There's probably nothing worse than that. I've lost parents. Chris says we've lost all our parents, and there's difficulty with those things. Other people, friends, family, you lose. It's never an easy thing. It's if you love someone, you're going to miss them. But losing a child, especially young and fit, but it had a bigger impact on a lot of people. One of the girls I told you he liked, the Sunday after he died, very next Sunday, he gave me a big hug and said, I've never thought as much about my faith or been more drawn back to my faith since that happened with Peter. And I know, I can see it in front of me, she's a much better Catholic. She's stronger in her faith. And I know from a lot of other parents they've told me it had a big impact on their kids because there was nothing otherwise wrong with him. He didn't smoke, didn't drink much, never done drugs, very fit, played lots of sport, worked a physical job. We don't know. It's up to God. God called him home. God did. And that was the time for him to come home. We just got to think we're blessed that we had him. And by the way, there wasn't always beer and Skittles. He gave us some grief like all of them do. But yeah.
Wow. So as you're talking about that, I'm just thinking to myself, wow, God really has his eye on you.
One person in our parish said to me after that, he knows some of the other history, you're a bit like Job, Paul. And I went, please don't wish that on. It can get a lot worse, right?
Yeah. No, we're not going to.
We won't go that far.
We're not going to compare you to Job, but I mean, the work that you've done over decades, the love and the passion you have for God's creation, and then even now in the way that you tell that, what I'm only imagining is never easy to retell over and over again. But even just for the selflessness that comes from you in what you do and have done on the sidewalks, what you've done with thousands of women over the years, what you've done in holding those babies that would have otherwise been aborted in holding them in your arms, and now even to share your grief with people who may not know how to grieve. I'm sure you've made some kind of connection with those who will watch this interview and will see that you are consistently pro-life across the board. That and then even when you come to hardship, the approach you've taken in even losing a son is that, well, he was God's first and we raised him in a particular way and that's the way he came back. And that's a beautiful consolation.
Yeah. Well, listen, I see my life as a privilege. I mean, I really had a privileged life in lots of ways, lots of good things in my life, right? But coming back to my faith, it was a grace. And pretty much that grace wasn't won by me. I'd thrown it away. It was won by my mum. And my dad certainly did a lot of that suffering as well, but her death. I told you that story at the start. And then you know the line, seek and you'll find, knock and the door will be open. It was always like that to me. I've met some remarkable people that I just feel privileged to have met and to know that have helped me. A friend of mine who's had his own share of grief, he said, but you've learnt from some very brilliant people. You have an obligation now to teach others. So, well, yeah, I take that point. I'm not as good at teaching as they were, the ones I've had to teach me, but I know I don't look at it as anything special. I feel it's an obligation I have. I don't know how to put it. It's like I said, I'm humbled by what God's given me, and I know what a manifest sinner I am and how the struggles we all have every day, I wouldn't get through and wouldn't survive if it wasn't for God's grace. That's just the only way I can put it. It's, you know, there's never been anyone written a book telling the stories on the sidewalk from our perspective. There's plenty of things written, women who've changed after abortion and regret their abortion, and the effects of abortion and different people, but no one who's spent thousands of hours on a sidewalk or street corner has written about it. Monsignor Riley never wrote a book on that. He's got a book of a collection of homilies, but he's never written that. There are people have often said to me, people want me to write a book. So before you forget all these stories, you've got to write them down, right? And I get there's some import to it. Anna Walsh, you might know, the academic, the lawyer at Notre Dame, says that anecdotal evidence will be useful one day to know all those stories, right? It should be documented. She wants me to write the book. She's prepared to help me, she says. I always used to say, when am I going to do that? Right? So, as much as it might be valuable. But I think it's this, and no one wants to kind of claim that credit because we know it's not us that did it.
Yeah.
We're an instrument, and that's kind of a privilege itself. I'd often complain about being that instrument, that I feel like Jeremiah.
Yeah.
But because people don't listen, it's very hard. But it's a gift.
Yeah.
And Monsignor said it to me. It's a charism, Paul, given to few, it seems, especially more to lay people than the clergy. But that's what we just got to trust God.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Paul, we stand with you as you continue to fight for life and what is good, true and beautiful in the world as given to us by God. And we thank you for giving up your time to be with us today.
Pleasure.
And we continue to pray for the very good work that you do, albeit changed now because of particular laws in our country. But we know that you will never stop standing for truth and for life. And we support you in that. And we haven't done it this episode, but we're going to ask you to do it now. If you do this with us, we're going to put the details of FLI down in everything we've got, and we're going to try and help along the way. This work doesn't happen for free.
No.
We need resources and the like. So if anyone out there wants to be generous and to help Paul and the team at FLI continue to do the right thing by standing for life in all of its aspects, from conception to natural death, to promote the culture of family in the world as God ordained it, then we want you please to be generous and to assist. So whatever we can do on our end.
We pretty much really need about $30,000 right now to publish our next booklet.
Yep.
If anyone's seen our other publications, they're beautiful. We're really well done, but this one's on modesty and chastity, written by a great moral theologian, Father Pius Mary Noonan, who's down in Tasmania, a Benedictine monk. Yep. And he covers this issue so superbly and so thoroughly. It's worth people getting and reading. And it's called Fig Leaves Are Not Enough.
Fig Leaves Are Not Enough.
It's a great title, but we need that sort of help, so for sure, yeah.
Yep. So we're happy to help promote that.
Can I just say this?
Please.
If we don't overcome the immodest behaviour and dress in modern society, we'll never end contraceptive use. If we don't end contraceptive use, we'll never end abortion.
Yes.
If we never realise the extent of the tentacles of the abortion industry and how far they've reached into our lives and how much they affect, how many drugs depend on abortion for their development and their testing. Yep. Those things are wrong and they've got to end. It's got to end. And those are the things we're publishing now. We've gone back to our original mandate, education.
Yep. And I couldn't agree more, because a lot of people that don't want to see out an argument or a properly formed kind of logical reasoning to its very end, for people like that, they're going to say, well, this is all just slippery slope stuff. We're going to go from one to the next, and that's too extreme. That doesn't happen. We've seen it happen.
That's happening.
It's happened in society. It happened with the same-sex marriage plebiscite all those years ago. It was only ever supposed to be about same-sex marriages. And now look at what has happened, the radical change in our culture because of that one thing. And so you are spot on in that. We're getting behind you in your work. If anyone wants to contribute to that work, you'll see the details on the show. And again, thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for your vulnerability today, for sharing what you've shared with us. And we're going to end the show now praying the way we started.
God bless you.
Okay?
Yep.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of life, for the life that you ordained we should all live. We thank you for the great work that Paul has done and continues to do through Family Life International. We ask that you strengthen this apostolate. And we ask, Heavenly Father, that you open up our hearts and minds to see the fullness of the truth. Help us overcome some of the obstacles and some of the biases that we all have in our own lives. Help us see truth, and especially the goodness and the beauty of human life from conception to natural death. We ask all these prayers through the intercession of the patroness of the pro-life movement, Our Lady of Guadalupe, as we pray together. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Our Lady of Guadalupe,
Pray
for us. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks for being on the show, Paul.
Thank you, Father. God bless you. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.